5.
Broncos. People may forget this, but in that divisional round loss to the Patriots, they were missing Bo Nix, their number one back, J.K. Dobbins, and their number 2 and 3 wide receivers. They were banged up at the end of the year. The NFL, as you well know, is a league of attrition, and they just picked a bad week to be playing in the divisional round. Team won 14 games. They don't allow sacks, and yet they led the NFL in sacks. I don't think that changes. Great head coaching, great line play. Denver at 5.
Yeah, this has been a slower off-season season for the Denver Broncos in terms of the discussions that we can have about them a couple years ago when they drafted Bo Nix. At least I was making videos non-stop about Bo Nix and Denver Broncos. I was so high on them, so hyped, so excited, and rode that out into throughout the whole entire season. And then going into the next season, there was other really awesome concrete moves that they made in free agency, defense, defensively and whatnot, all this good stuff. And also just the insane belief that Bo Nix is going to be even better than he was last year, like all that stuff. And so you're able to really ride all that momentum into the throughout the off-season into this season. And then of course the Broncos were controversial like from the jump. I mean they really were, kind of a bizarre game against the Titans and the Colts. Like it was just the way how their season unfolded. It was truly the gift that kept on giving. I mean like you had some of the most insane, spectacular, wildest moments like in NFL history, especially with that guy right there against the Giants, whatever. Then you had some of the most like head-scratching like, is this a POS? Is there a positive spin here? Is it just one of those games? Whether it was against the Raiders, whether it was against the Jets, whatever. And it just rode all this momentum. And then, of course, now going into the playoffs, controversial win against the Buffalo Bills, which was, an wildly insanely exciting game in the playoffs, one of the most exciting playoff games in a while, quite frankly. And then Bo Nix is hurt. And that alone is obviously, and when I say controversial, when I've said it in the past and now it's like I don't mean like controversial in the sense of like, you know what I mean? But you have Bo Nix now obviously getting injured, which was just so disheartening, so depressing, such a bummer, and yet there was still a sense that they could win going up against the Patriots. And then that game was obviously one of the craziest games ever. Colin made the claim that that was one of the crazy that was like the craziest weather game that he ever witnessed. And like he doesn't usually have those takes randomly. I feel like he's a little bit more strategic when he makes those types of claims. So, he's been around the block once or twice. He's watched a handful of games himself. So, I think that kind of just shows you just how dramatic of a game and how bizarre of a game that was. They still could have won, but they obviously didn't. And Bo Nix is injured and then and then it was just things kind of just flattened out. Things kind of just flattened out and I was cleaning up some of the images that I had kind of saved that I can bring up and I was like I got to this image and I was just like oh I showed this enough I should probably just delete this when am I going to play it and I was like it's only March right now and I was like I'm sure Nick Wright's gonna say something crazy and bashbo Nick I am sure something's gonna come up and I was like I couldn't bring myself. All the other images that I could bring up, like they're all deleted except for the ones that I obviously use like literally daily. But I was like, I can't bring myself to delete this because it matters so much. And the last game that we just saw Bo Nix play was his best game. I mean, when you look at important games where the Broncos needed Bo Nix to be great, whether it was against the Kansas City Chiefs, whether it is against the Packers, the Bill, like he's been awesome. So, not only in these individual got-to-have-it games, got-to-have-it moments, Bo Nix has been awesome. And he has these foundational accomplishments, accolades, however you want to define them. And so when you have all of that going for you, but then there's not any dramatic exciting, oh, the Broncos just traded their first-round pick for Trent McDuffie, right? Like they're not doing those things. So then there's no sense that momentum is building even though the momentum has already been built. The momentum is already there. You understand what I'm saying? Like some teams need that momentum building and the Broncos simply do not. Obviously, their biggest move is that they are essentially changing play callers, and how that exactly will look like in practice is, your guess is as good as mine at this point. But that alone I actually find really interesting and really intriguing. And sometimes certain coaches you have to kind of just trust. Sometimes it's the reputation. You have to trust what other people say because they're actually with them, right? They're actually on the front lines with them. They're going to have a better understanding. We obviously can see to a degree on the outside looking in with certain play callers saying certain coaches, especially if there were head coaches in college or there were OCs and another team, you can make an opinion. It's a little bit easier to maybe view an opinion of like Ben Johnson with Detroit than say maybe like a quarterback's coach with a different team, whatever it may be. Like you kind of have to just trust the other people that are actually like, no, like I work for this team, and so like I actually know the conversations that are being had, or like I actually know what type of offense this coach is looking to run, etc. You have to just trust a little bit more than maybe you'd want to. So that is a kind of a situation that the Denver Broncos is fighting them, because even something like a Sean Payton, where it's just like how much influence does he have on the offense, the game plan, like how does this all actually going to look like? And I'm not going to try to predict that in this moment of time, because it'll all just be made up honestly, and I don't feel like doing that. So I rather talk about like what actually matters is that this team is already great. This team is already awesome and is already shown to be incredibly resilient, and obviously the most important position. The quarterback, their most important player, Bo Nix, is seemingly one getting a better play caller, maybe like a more intimate relationship with his offensive play caller in this moment of time, which will be great. As well as he's already been getting better and better and better in the biggest, most important moments. And so it's like now you're at year 3. Now he's way more comfortable. He's way more resilient. The fact that last season was a little rocky and he was missing some throws and he was a little too sped up. Blah 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 blah. That's amazing. That's awesome. That's how you grow. You grow from your laundry list of failures. You don't grow from your wins. You don't grow from your high points. You can build some confidence. You can build some belief. No doubt about it. It adds clarity to what is possible, right? But it's like you grow from your failures. That's where the resilience comes from. If every video from the jump, if every video I made just got 100,000 views, like where is the growth? I got confidence now that when I make a video, I get 100,000. And believe me, that's a great problem to have. I rather have inflated confidence and just keep giving me, 100,000 view videos. Like that, it's fine. But it's like when you make a video that like no one watches or it just straight up fails, then you're just kind of like, well, what went wrong here? What do I need to do? Or when you now have the successes and failures balanced, when you are succeeding and then you fail or have a problem, you have a clearer picture of everything. You don't really have a clear picture if all you do is win, win, win. No matter what, you just don't. So there continues to be more and more clarity. And development out of Bon. Bo Nix now knows without a shadow of a doubt. No matter how much belief you have, you still need to know it. There's a difference between, wisdom is doing, knowledge is knowing. And so now Bo Nix has been able to experience, right? Like again, we saw what he did against the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen, right? Fourth quarter, overtime, etc. Like he always believed he could do that, no doubt. But now he knows he can do that. He also knows and has the wisdom of his failures, of the struggles of last season and the season before that, etc., etc. So all of this becomes so much more of a balanced version of Bo Nix, and therefore just fundamentally a better team. So, it's so interesting because people still just don't have a tremendous amount, like no one's. I'm so fascinated to see what happens in, I don't remember exactly when they do this, but it's coming sooner rather than later, when everyone starts to just release all their quarterback lists and it's just a free fall, because it's like random people you never even heard of. Like first things first, we'll be like John Smith from the lawblogfoot.com said that Bo Nix is top 3 quarterback, right? Like it's always like such random stuff. And then of course it's the main voices out there, Sims, whoever. And I'm just so interested to see where the standing of Bo Nix is because nobody was confident in Bo Nix last season. They just really weren't in terms of the general media. And then he played obviously brilliant in the playoffs. And again, he had his individual brilliant games, Casey, etc. And even someone like Nick Wright is like when he played Kansas City in that one game, he's like that was the best game he ever played. And then when he played against the Buffalo Bills, he was like that was the best game he ever played. And so it's just like, well, if we take that logic, we take those as true statements, you're saying then like he's playing his best games in the most important games, in the biggest games, and he's playing his best games more regularly. So again, that's what I mean by the momentum building. Not only does he have that experience, that resume, that track record now of the failures and the successes, but he's also Indivai, despite all of that, outside of all of that, he's also just growing and evolving as a quarterback. Combined now with potentially an improvement with coaching or just more targeted coaching, someone who can maybe focus a little bit more on a Bo Nix and you're just like, here we go. Let's get after it. So, yeah, the Broncos can still find themselves in a situation where they can be an elite top team and yet it's still kind of like but which is what they were last year. People were saying this is the weakest number 1 seed. Like, didn't Alex Smith say that? I think I had a whole video about that. And then it was just like people were like, Bo Nix is really not that important to the Denver Broncos. Again, you had those takes like Nick and, Danny, they were like, for any team that can lose a quarterback, it's actually the best case scenario for the Broncos compared to like say the Patriots or these other teams. Then it's like, well, we saw what that looked like and it wasn't the best case scenario. Wasn't very good. And so the way how the conversations will continue to unfold, I'm really interested. I don't imagine people are all of a sudden going to start to really believe in the Denver Broncos. And so I just feel like it'll be almost a little bit of a Groundhog's Day situation, except for the fact that Bo Nix has the potential to shatter that where people will be forced to be like, this is a new era for the Denver Broncos. And that really all stops and starts with the consistency and level of play of Bo Nix. If there is a consistency and an increased level of play, then I think the Denver Broncos absolutely. It becomes unavoidable. It becomes impossible to ignore because you would now have a long enough track record. Think about Sam Darnold. People did not buy into the Seattle Seahawks. They won the Super Bowl. People were not saying week after week after week this is the best team people were like I think the Dallas Cowboys would beat them in the playoffs well I still rather have Baker Mayfield it was just like and then even after they won they're like well any quarterback could win with the Seahawk right it was similar things what they said about Jalen and the Eagles etc. but that was because of the track record at this point Nick's track record would be great even greater so then it's just like you still want to fight up against that. I mean, I'm sure they'll probably will be there, but I just think it becomes harder to go along with. So, Denver Broncos top 5 according to Colin right now after free agency, obviously not factoring in draft schedule, blah 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 blah. But I mean, yeah, I do think it's fascinating because there is not any momentum building with the Denver Broncos, but I think there's still an insane amount of momentum and considering they were in the AFC Championship last year and they lost, laughter. Very largely due to the fact that their starting quarterback wasn't saying the fact that the Broncos aren't on the top of most people's lists of greatness. It's pretty interesting. Those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Denver Broncos? How do you see this season going? Like, how do you think the perception of who they are, how do you think it should look as of right now? Because that's really what we're talking about with a lot of these things right now, right? Colin's top 10 here. Like it's really all about perception/predictions, right? I lean more on perception in March rather than predictions because predictions are silly to me in March. Like in this moment in time I mean I often do find the perception most fascinating, but especially in March in terms of like what we saw them do in January, the discussions that follow then in February, March and beyond. So let me know your thoughts. I read every single comment. It's whether you agree with me or disagree with me. Either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get into some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be a part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.